and you've had to defend yourself with a knife, do you think in that instance that that's going to be the moment that you're going to go, wow, let me go find the nearest police officer, hang out here at the scene so that, you know, I can try to explain myself. I mean, obviously it was a bad decision, right? To lie. And I'm not saying that should have been what he should have done. But in the moment, in the shock of the moment, in the aftermath, as he's processing, he had no processing time. This isn't the situation where, I don't know if you guys remember a case. There was a case out in Florida where a guy named Michael Dunn, he shot a kid for after a dispute in regards to loud music in a parking lot of a convenience store. His girlfriend, fiance, went in the store to go buy some wine. He was leaving his son's wedding. He asked the kids to turn down the music, and a verbal altercation ensues, which he claims he believes that one of the kids pulled a gun out. He pulls his gun out and shoots the car up. Now, in that case, the reason why I'm making a parallel with that case is because he leaves, right? So it's what he does after. Part of what he did after was concerning. And what he did after, knowing he had shot these kids, right? He leaves, which is perfectly acceptable if you think you're getting shot at and you think there's crossfire and everything. But he gets back to his hotel. He doesn't reach out to the police. He drives home. Now, eventually, like the next day, he does. But it was a long delay. He didn't go out. He didn't go back to the scene. He didn't call 911. He didn't say, I just got shot out in a parking lot. In Nicolae Miu's case, we didn't have that kind of time. He was angry, and the way he stabbed the kids did tremendous damage. Okay, Corey, look, are you watching the same video we are? Because I don't think you are. There's no way in the world you could be watching the same video that he is. You cannot, unless you're going to be crazy enough to break down like the state did. And remember, the frames you're seeing are 1/24th of a second. Think about what 1/24th of a second is. He is acting on just, to him, he's just acting. There isn't intent. There's not first degree intent. There's not even second degree intent. He isn't intending to kill anyone. He is believing, and rightly so, you heard the hit. And the state wants to say, well, there was no injuries. Well, we heard it. But what you didn't hear, and what I want you to understand, and this is why I think the jury I was thinking long and hard about this. The jury kept playing that video back at the time of the punch because you don't hear a punch, which is why I have begun to further dig in on the idea they're not guilty. There's somebody back there saying, no, he hit him. They said, and somebody in there, I'm sure, a majority of the jurors says, I want you to hear Mr. Miu get punched. Boom. And I want you to listen. Do you hear her get punched? You don't. And if he haymakers her with the right hand, just like when Mr. Miu got hit, you're going to hear it. You don't hear it. So, I think there's a large body of evidence to support the idea that she wasn't punched. She was putting her hands on him. He was in some way pushing her back or trying to get her hands off of him. It was interpreted by somebody there. And again, remember, the idea here with him, it's like, I don't understand. You can't see the pattern of events. He comes over. He's looking for a phone. He's snorkeling. They're heckling him. He becomes a predator. He begins touching girls. If you listen to that video closely, then they say, no, you're touching little boys. What are you touching little boys to? We have a predator. If you listen to what Joanne Cockfield and some other, we have a predator here. There's a predator here. There's a predator here. Okay. Now the girl comes over. She attempts to push him down the lake. He says, get your hands off me. And what do they say? Do they say what actually happened? No, they say, he punched me, or he punched a girl. He hit a girl, or they don't say punch. They said, he hits a girl. He hit a girl. And at that point, Dante said, here's hit a girl, and he hits him. Dante even says, I didn't see the hit. I just heard someone say it. So I looked around. I said, you hit a girl? And wham. Now Dante, who came over allegedly to bring this thing down a notch, turns into, an aggressor. Well, see, that's what I said, Ian, and some people have said they don't see that, but I think it is. I think it's a lot like that, and I think the knife part should make it an easier case for the jury to come to self-defense with. and the fact that he stopped. You know, he didn't, and this is another thing that I think that we have to look at in this case. This is not one of those instances where, like, if he was a crazed maniac, you don't stop at one. I mean, look at these heat of passion cases where people get stabbed 28, 29, 30 times. Okay. If people get angry and get mad and they have an intent to kill, they don't just stab you once, they stab you 100 times. So that can't be lost back there on the jurors. Now, again, it's just this idea that we have when a case happens, and it's like a kid was killed, or a child was killed, or a 17-year-old was killed, and they just say, they lose all reason. That's where they stop at. They don't look at the facts. But this is why we have a jury system that requires 12 people to come and say we're guilty or not guilty. And if the 12 can't come to it, well, guess what? Now the case gets retried again. Now it gets reevaluated. Now all those witnesses have to come back before. It doesn't mean it'll be better off for the defendant or for the state. How you doing, DJ Harris? How you doing, Angela Picard? Thank you for stopping in. I'm thinking we might have a verdict. There's a lot of movement going on behind me, if you can see there. But as soon as we hear something, I have the sound on. As soon as we hear something, we're going into that courtroom, and we will find out what the next step is. Hopefully it is Nicolae Miu going home. That would be fantastic. But what is he going home to? Oh, it is a verdict. Oh, it is? How do you know, Ian? Because I haven't seen it updated on Law and Crime yet. Oh, verdict is in. Okay, Natalie says verdict is in. Verdict is in. Law and Crime just announced it. Okay, so verdict is in, guys. Or just wait for court to come on now. So verdict is in. This is, listen, if you also, one of the first cases I ever covered was a lady that is very similar to the Karen Reed case. Lady ran over a man that was in her driveway, hit him. And it was about 6 hours. So, yes, please follow what Laura said. I appreciate it, Laura. If you could hit the like button, that would be fantastic. I would be forever appreciative of that, because that helps push the channel into the algorithm and get more people in. So that would be fantastic. I would really appreciate that. Trying to see, it doesn't say how many likes I have. Maybe I don't have any at all. Wow. I can't imagine that. I'm gonna have to go in on the back end and see what's going on here. Oh, we have 8 likes. Yeah, so my software is just not updating. Don't know why. But I think we're heading to not guilty. I mean, and I like to think I'm a pretty good person. All right, so let's see here. Okay, here we go. Let's go into the courtroom. I think we're going in, guys. All right. I see a lot of shaking going on. A lot of shaking. Yep. All right. Well, guys, moment of truth. Let's make sure that the sound is on. Yes, it is. All right. Here we go.
Please be seated.
Extremely nerve-wracking. Let's hope they get it right, guys.
All right, we are back in session on the record in state of Wisconsin versus Nicolae Miu. The attorneys are present with Mr. Miu. 12 jurors are in the courtroom. Mr. Ashland, I understand you are the foreperson.
Correct.
Did your jury reach a verdict?
Yeah.
Did you reach a verdict on each of the 6 counts?
Yes, we did.
Please hand the verdict forms to the bailiff.
Got to be not guilty, guys.
Verdicts read as follows. As to count one of the information, Isaac Schuman, the jury finds Nicolae Miu guilty of first-degree reckless homicide as submitted. Question, did Mr. Miu commit the crime while
Holy
using
shit.
a dangerous weapon?
Wow.
Answer,
Sorry for
yes.
cussing, guys, but Jesus Christ. Are you kidding
As
me?
to count two of the information, Alexander Martin, the jury finds Nicolae Miu guilty of first-degree
Wow.
recklessly endangering safety as submitted.
Wow.
Did Mr. Miu commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes.
What the hell did this jury
As
freaking
to
watch?
count three of the information, Dante Carlson, the jury finds Nicolae Miu guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as submitted. Did Mr. Miu commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes.
This is insane. Like,
As to count four of the information, Anthony Carlson, the jury finds Nicolae Miu guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as submitted.
I'll be honest with you. I've never
Did Mr. Miu
been
commit
so
the crime
angry
while
with the
using a
verdict.
dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. As to count five of the information, Rhyley Mattison, the jury finds Nicolae Miu guilty of first-degree recklessly endangering safety as submitted. Did Mr. Miu commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. As to count six of the information, Madison Cohen, the jury finds Nicolae Miu guilty of battery as charged. Did Mr. Miu commit the crime while using a dangerous weapon? Answer, yes. Members of the jury, I do have to verify that this is in fact a unanimous verdict.
This is
So I'm going
insanity,
to ask each
man.
of you if I correctly read the verdict.
I mean, this is absolute
if you agree with it.
insanity.
So when I call your
Unbelievable.
name, if you agree with the verdict that I read, please answer by saying yes. If you disagree with the verdict, you can answer by saying no. Ms. Navarro,
Holy
do you
shit, man.
the verdict that I read?
Like, I can't even believe this.
Mr. Cook, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Snell, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. Pelzel, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. Knapp, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Diedrich, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. McMahon, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Henderlong, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Mr. Ashland, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. McMullen, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
Ms. Lewandowski, do you agree with the verdict that I read?
Yes.
I cannot
additional
believe they
polling?
found him guilty of first degree.
No? All right. It
Like,
is a
this is-
unanimous verdict. Members of the jury, your service in this case is
What
completed.
the hell is wrong with those
You are
jurors?
free to read accounts about this trial.
Like, I understand-
You're free to talk
Oh, my
about this
God.
case with anyone.
Oh,
However, you do not have to discuss this case with anybody or answer any questions about
do
this
they
case.
understand what first
than from the
degree
court.
is?
So this includes the parties, the lawyers, the media, or anybody else.
Even the judge was shocked. I think
If you
heard
do
that.
decide to discuss this case with anyone, please treat any such discussion with a degree of solemnity, such that whatever you would say, you'd be willing to say in front of your fellow jurors or here in open court. It is in the public interest that there be the utmost freedom of debate in the jury room, and that jurors be permitted to express
Well,
their
DJ,
views without fear of incurring the anger of any litigants or the public.
I think it
For
was
that
a
reason,
pretty
please respect the
clean
privacy of the
trial.
views of your fellow jurors. If you do decide to speak, please only speak for yourselves and not for anybody else.
This is freaking horrible.
On
man.
behalf of my colleagues, Judges Needham, Vlack, and Nordstrand,
But the state did
along
not
with my
have to go
courtroom
forward
staff,
with this.
thank you for your participation in this important case. Court is now adjourned. Please take the jury out.
All rise for the
That jury should be ashamed of themselves. I mean, I hate to say that about a jury, but they got this so wrong, man. They got this so wrong.
Please be seated. Based on the unanimous verdict, I will enter convictions on each of the 6 counts. Bail is revoked. Mr. Miu will be held in custody pending sentencing. My staff will contact the attorneys and will schedule the sentencing date. I will order a pre-sentence investigation report, but we can do the scheduling at a later time. Is there anything else, Mr. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Schroffesi?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Court is adjourned.
All I will say is I am absolutely astounded, shocked. Look, obviously at the end of the day, we have to respect this jury's verdict, right? That's important because, he did have a full trial, but I am at a loss for how this jury could come to this verdict. I am truly at a loss. I did not believe there was any chance they would convict him of first degree. How do you get to first degree here? In the state, they got away with it, man. I mean, what in the heck was this jury watching? What were we watching? Were we all watching the wrong thing? I mean, how in the world does this happen? It's a dark day. I mean, at least in my opinion. And I know there's some out there that say, hey, he's guilty. They got it right. But, here's the thing. What happened to him could happen to anybody. And we're only as good as we treat our worst members of people who we accuse of doing the worst things in our society. So when we decide that this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to, they were Angela Picard. They were from wealthy families and prominent families. I don't know what their prominence was from, but they were from families who were financially influential in the area. The fact that they got, clearly there had to have been a couple of holdouts, but I'm telling you, I've been in a jury room, and there are some strong personalities that take over. And like I said, I watched 10-2 guilty go, and that was the jury I was on, and we all went 12-0 on a lesser offense. That ultimately, the defendant, we didn't know at the time it was going to happen, but the defendant ultimately walked out because we didn't know whether he was out on bond or not. But apparently he was, he'd already served a couple of years in jail waiting. Well, see, Jeff, that's what you're 100% right, Jeff. I think you're right. I think we're looking, again, as trying to be de facto 13 jurors, right? 13th jurors. We spent a lot more time with this case. We were watching it all day long, talking about it afterwards, watching the videos. I'm sure some of you are watching things even when we weren't all watching it together. And the way the state presented this case, that's why I said the stills were disturbing. They shouldn't have been allowed. The way the stills portrayed things was wrong. And then you have the kids testifying. I don't know. I don't know. I'd love to figure out. I don't know. I haven't been able to figure out if Wisconsin has anything online that you can get your hands on. But I'd love to know, man. I mean, I really am shocked. I've never seen law and crimes not guilties and mistrials so stacked. I mean, this jury, wow. Wow. That's all I can say is wow. I mean, that's all I can say. This was not the right verdict. And we are about to put a man away for the rest of his life. Well, yeah, I know. In the 10-minute video left out, I know. I mean, even the investigating officer to which the state banned from the case, has said when she watched the video, she thought it was self-defense. Yet here we are. Oh, man. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Well, I'll tell you what, Karen Reed better be concerned because she's going on trial next week. She's got a set of facts that I think a lot of people are going to look at. There's a lot of concerns with her case. I've just downloading documents and stuff and reading up on her case. We're going to start preparing for her trial next week. Chad Daybell's on trial as we speak. Obviously, I think it's pretty clear Chad Daybell will be found guilty. I don't think there's a trials like that. That's why it's like I like trials like this where there's self-defense involved and things of that nature. Chad Daybell is obviously an interesting case because it's been publicized and of course it deals with horrific things. But I don't think at the end of the day he's got any chance of going home. It'll be interesting to see what his defense ends up being, but Yep, Laura, I feel the same way. I'm flummoxed. I'm just trying to figure out how the jury could have got to that point. And so quickly, too. No problem, Angela. Please, yes, do so. He's going to need him because where he's going isn't going to be very friendly. It isn't going to be very nice. He's accused of killing kids. Ian, I have no idea. I mean, in the disingenuous way the state chose to argue this case is so disturbing to me even today. Like when I listened, the state attorneys couldn't even look like they believed. They looked uncomfortable making their own arguments. Yep. Well, it's becoming a myth because, see, this jury didn't understand the presumption of innocence. And look, Jeff, this is what I'm saying. What they're doing, this is why when I was covering the Diddy case, whether you like what Diddy's accused of or not, what you should be concerned about at this particular point is the way they went about that raid and what they're doing. And the reason they did the raid against Diddy the way they did is because if you understand things from understanding how powerful the presumption of innocence is when it's applied, it's all being designed to attack that. It's been on attack for years, right? I mean, that's what the prosecutors hate. They hate the fact that a defendant is presumed innocent in this country. They would prefer that they get the level of charge and the defendant has to find their way out. But the problem is to disprove a negative is too difficult, and the state has millions of dollars and unlimited resources to go after you. So the presumption of innocence is meant to balance that out. But the state says, well, no, what we're going to do is then fine. We will use the unlimited resources. We will use our power and might. We will use the ability to coordinate with the press. We will use the ability to influence public sentiment. We will use the ability to take the respect that many people will feel for law enforcement taking action, and we will use that to attack the presumption of innocence to make it seem to the public and to prospective jurors that this person must be guilty of something, right? Why would the FBI be at the door? And Diddy probably is guilty of something. But the point is they did that for optics. They rolled Humvee military vehicles down his block to make it look that way, to make it seem that he's guilty of something already. That's an attack on the presumption of innocence. And they did that to Mr. Miu in this case. They went into media. Look, what you have to also understand is at least me, I didn't hear about this case. I think I heard about it. I remember hearing somebody was like knifing people on a riverbank, but I never really followed it much. But they have lived in the community. They've seen the news reports. They saw those kids at the hospital getting interviewed. They saw the police take the approach that this was a crazed maniac on the riverbank. Remember, his own wife has left him. She's divorced him. Now, it might have been to protect her assets, but I think it was also because, she's out there living in the community. She's out there feeling what the tenor of the community is. So these jurors came in predisposed. They didn't come in thinking Mr. Miu was innocent. They came in looking to see Mr. Miu prove his innocence. That's a problem. That's what the media does. That's why, one of the reasons why I wanted to start this channel, and not that I can make a huge impact, but maybe, every 1,000 persons that subscribes can. And, so far we've had a lot of interest in the channel. At least I know it's a lot of shorts and the mobile stuff, but mainly shorts have gotten my subscribers up. I had some people come in my comments and say, "You buying subs?" Hell no, I'm not buying subs. Why would I do that? I'm not doing that. It's a waste of money. I didn't expect to grow this fast, this strong, but you know what? It's because of short form content. But short form content is what we live on today. So that's why I like to produce them and get it out there. Just clips of court, Oh, absolutely, Jeff. Diddy is getting the full guilt by public opinion. Mr. Miu is getting the same thing. The lie that he punched a girl was a narrative to create an opinion. That's been out there. You're right. Absolutely. 110%. And that's been out there from the beginning. That's what I'm saying. So this jury, while we just found out about this case and we're watching it because, hey, I put up a mobile short. Some of you found some people found it because I put up the mobiles. Some found it because Law and Crime decided to cover it like I did. And we find it and we start watching it and we go, wow, this doesn't seem right. But we're not judging it from a lens of having our mind polluted for 2 years. So when that jury arrives and they realize they're on the Miu case, they say, yeah, we can set it aside. Let's see what this guy has to say. And then he gets up on the stand and the state's talking about this and the community's already decided. That's a powerful thing because, like Jeff said, the presumption of innocence has become an Instagram meme, right? Or whatever, whatever they put up on social media these days. That's what it's become. Because in reality, everybody assumes you're guilty. You're sitting in that defendant's seat. But one of the problems is we didn't hear the defense attorneys focus on it either. Because I think it was Ian or someone in there said, well, if you start talking presumption of innocence, people think that makes you sound guilty. No, it doesn't. Explain what it means. It's the way you're supposed to analyze the evidence. And we didn't hear that. And my dad, that was one of the big things he talked about. In fact, his opening statement was about the presumption of innocence and about the fact that his client's sitting there. He very seldomly got into what he was going to show because he would get into the presumption of innocence and how they were to look at things and expectations and explaining this isn't what you've seen on back when he started in the 70s. You had Perry Mason and Matlock. This isn't those cases. This is a real court of law, and this is how we view things. And I need you to look at it from this standpoint. And then it was in the closing arguments, you jump back off that, but you focus on the reasonable doubt, the burden of the state, the fact that we're not here. This isn't some movie. A courtroom is not some movie. It's not the place where the defendant comes in and proves himself innocent. That's not what it's about, because we're not here because of the defendant. See, the state always says we're here because of the defendant. No, that is actually a falsehood. You are in a courtroom because the state has brought charges against you, which they claim to have proof beyond a reasonable doubt that you have committed all elements of the crimes that they are alleging you committed. That's why you're in that courtroom. It is not the actions of the defendant. It is the actions of the state. Now, it is the actions of the defendant that they're alleging brought those charges, but they're in that courtroom because the state alleges they have the evidence. So when you start from there and then you go, okay, we're here because the state says they have the proof. So state, let's see what you got. Right now, we're presuming Mr. Miu is innocent. He's innocent of all charges. He's sitting over there. And if the jury were to come out right now and start this deliberations right now, it's not guilty. That's where you start at. That's where you start out. In fact, that was one of the questions my dad would start out in jury selection, or he would come out and say, if you had to render a verdict right now, what would your verdict be? Do you know what your verdict would be? And he'd ask each juror that. Start conditioning them for the not guilty. But they'd say, some of them would say, I'm not sure. That's the wrong answer. It's actually not guilty. What I just introduced to you is the presumption of innocence. I think, Ian, I think that's, I don't think it always is. I think the state sometimes, I know in the, I remember sitting in several trials of my dad, and when I served, the defense table was actually on the opposite side. When I served as a juror, my dad's cases, so the jury was always actually on the side of the state. And the reason why, one of the reasons why you would think that is because the burden lies with the state. And that's why the state gets the opportunity to have the final word before the jury goes back. But it's a different world, again, when these attorneys come in, or defense attorneys come in and they decide we're going to prove somebody innocent and we're going to take on a burden. And in this case, it was very clear to understand. Some people came into it, I remember saying, well, there's a burden. Some states, they do put a burden. Wisconsin did not. The burden was only a very, very low burden. It was not to the jury, it was to the judge, for the judge to allow the instruction on self-defense and the privilege of self-defense. They call it a privilege in Wisconsin. And the privilege of self-defense. That was not something the jury had to jump over the hurdle. That was a judge hurdle. So the judge decides whether or not that comes in at the end of the case. And that, as we read in the jury instructions, that can come in through cross-examination. That can come in through state witnesses. That can come in through evidence presented by the defense. And in this case, obviously, it came in by the video itself. It could be viewed as self-defense. It could be viewed as an intentional act. Yes, Jack, unfortunately, there has been a verdict, and I am sad to report Mr. Miu was found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide and then basically on all the charges of attempted first degree. They convicted him of everything. So we're all just kind of reeling right now. Some of us are. Some are celebrating. That's fine. I have no problem. I want my space to be, just because I have an opinion, come in and talk to me about the opposite. I hope I don't make anybody feel like they can't share their opinion. I want them to. And that is right, Laurie. Yes, it is, because the right of self-defense is a right, and that is where this comes in, where people are saying you don't have a right. That drunk kids, the recognition here that these kids were out of control. They were out of control. They were drunk. They were high. They were disparaging this man. They were calling him a pedophile for no reason. They were inciting people off the riverbank to beat him up. And I still believe the defense, absolutely, when I look it up, for the people. For the people means doing something outside of your comfort zone for the good of a group or of a group. When and again, I don't know. Maybe Spencer didn't look it up. I can't imagine, but you never know. You got to remember, attorneys, we probably put too much into them and what their level of preparation is. My dad will tell you, and used to tell me, a lot of attorneys they don't start preparing until 2 days before trial. And they start reviewing stuff and they start coming up with things. I would like to think these guys put more into that. But the idea that they didn't look up for the people, that was a big part, had to be in all the statements. But that should have been an argument that Mr. Cockfield was battle crying the beatdown. That's what he was doing. So when I hear that, I hear him saying, beat this man up for the people, for the culture. Do something. We normally wouldn't beat an old man up, but you're out here messing with little girls. You're out here being a predator. You're about to catch one today. And they thought, hey, he's unarmed. He's 52. We'll beat him up. We'll post it to social media. Get lots of likes. Was that this morning, Jeff, that they got? Because I heard audio. I thought I heard audio all the times that it was played. There were times that they played it without audio, like in their closing, when they would want to argue with things and slow it down. If that's what you're referring to, I agree. That had to have been. I'm sure that was something that was dealt with before. Yep. Oh, yes, J9, no problem. I know it is. It is horrible. Well, that is true, Lori Passos. That is true. That is true. That is true. And we don't know what the makeup of that jury was. For all we know, it could have been younger people from the generation of the accusers who felt like, yeah, well, what they did was okay. But it's unbelievable. It's truly unbelievable. I just, oh no, there was, Ian. There was. There was a whole slew of options. There were 6 different levels they could have gone down to and convicted them of. That's why they said, well, hell, those people probably couldn't even hear. I mean, at least a 90-year-old. I mean, they'd look, nor could, man, I'll tell you. I'm not going to say that, but I don't think that they could have. I don't think that they probably were going to be able to necessarily understand things in a way in what was happening. Certainly not the for the people stuff. They just, but maybe they were the holdouts. And how did you find out, Ian? Was that reported through Law and Crime, or was that reported through Court TV, or another place? Prayers for this poor man who went to the river Tubi one day and lost everything, including his freedom. Yep. No, Ian, they did not set a sentencing date. They decided that they said they would set a sentencing date at another time. I think the judge understood. I heard the judge when they were reading that verdict. He was shocked. This judge was shocked. I think this judge thought this jury was going to find him not guilty. I mean, you could even see the skepticism with the way. I don't think the judge ever thought they'd go first. I mean, I think the judge thought, maybe he might be having a difficult decision. Well, yeah, it's probably the 2 people in the 20s that led that deliberation. You'd be shocked. Some of you may learn on or been on a jury, but I'm telling you, I had to keep it on track. When we were discussing the case, they were wanting to speculate about this or that, and I had to remind them, you don't get to speculate. Well, it could have been this. You deal with what the state brought in. The state has the burden, okay? So you don't get to go find him guilty because you think, well, it could have been this or could have been this or maybe it was this or, well, maybe it's there, but it did. No, you deal with the evidence that's sitting in front of you and then you apply it to the law. Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. I think they should. I in a case where there's video evidence, I can't believe they didn't have a laptop provided to them or a way for them to run that video as many times as they needed to. Because again, remember what we're seeing is video of a video. They've got the full HD, as Mr. Cockfield said, that full new iPhone crisp, HD video. He has it in HD video. So there are things that they probably can see that didn't come through on our end, what you're looking for, moments that you could slow it down and move it around. So the fact they didn't have that video to assess a self-defense case where that video is everything, but the state didn't want, look, this is the point. The takeaway here is how the state plays here. It goes on every day. The state plays with the evidence. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that's where the problem with the criminal justice system is we get caught up in the idea that a crime was committed, but we don't worry about making sure that we have a fair process always, or that the state prosecutors have to act fairly. And a lot of it's come from the Nancy Grace culture. And then of course you've got a lot of prosecutors over at Court TV. They're the ones that are pushing the media. And that's a problem because, again, you look over there at Court TV, everybody's a prosecutor. I'm not saying prosecutors can't be fair. Some prosecutors have been public defenders and some prosecutors, but we have a media that is being driven by a prosecutorial culture and that we know what sells is, I guess, bloodthirsty. Hey, this guy did something. They don't deserve rights. I mean, I heard Julie Grant talking about the father. I'm sure she's so upset right now that he got his statement thrown out. I've still yet to cover that, but that he got his statement thrown out. And what he did to his sons is gut wrenching and horrifying. But the bottom line is he still deserves a trip to the judicial system. He still deserves a fair investigation. And it's in cases like that that you should demand that the police make sure that they do their job properly, follow the law, that they have a whole team of prosecutors at the prosecuting attorney's office that they can consult with, make sure it's done right. Your comments on speculation are spot on. Instagram culture and action. Yep, the jury's never. I know, but I'm telling you, I was right. I was shocked, and I never would have necessarily believed it until I was in that jury room and I experienced it for myself. But I was the foreperson, so I was having to kind of guide that a little bit. And I was a bit younger. I remember, luckily there was an older gentleman that helped me because I kind of was trying to get these people under control. And then there was one holdout, and I remember she was very, very adamant about what she wanted, and she was, she had the potential probably to have swayed people. But we talked and I said, "Listen, I understand what you're saying, but what you're saying and what you're relying upon isn't in the evidence. So we can either go out and tell the judge we're hung, or we can follow the evidence and render a verdict here." But like I said, not every jury is going to have individuals back there who have any experience with the law. And that's the danger. That's what I think, now but you just think that what I would think should kick into a degree is I could be here. Like, think about this, right? You're out driving right now, and this is what I always try to tell my kids, everybody thinks when they look at a criminal case, you're so far away from being in that seat. Every time you drive in a motor vehicle and you speed a little bit, or you look down at your phone, or you touch your phone when you're not supposed to, it's become now where you get in an accident, someone gets injured, someone, God forbid, dies. Your actions right before that accident, your speed, whether you touched your phone, is all going to be looked at. And you could very well find yourself sitting in a courtroom. Well, yeah, Tonio, I mean, I agree. See, that's not the point. The point is you don't, the state and the police do not have the right to come in and look. Here's the point, Tonio. You don't have an understanding probably of the laws that are around you. But I guarantee you, as I've used to tell my employees when we would have audits and stuff at the office, or I'd come in and I'd say, listen, here's the thing. I don't want to pick a fight with my person above me. You don't want to pick a fight with me, because here's the problem. We're all, every day, there's something we're doing wrong, right? So if I put you under a microscope, I'm going to find stuff. If I get put under a microscope, you're going to find stuff. There are laws that are broken every single day, every moment. One of them is the conspiracy laws, right? And what do I mean by this? Is a lot of people don't understand what it means when they say, again, that's what they were talking about on Law and Crime, is one of the easiest ways they're going to charge Diddy will be conspiracy to commit RICO. Not that he committed RICO, but conspiracy to commit RICO. Because a conspiracy doesn't require an actual criminal act to be completed. It only requires an overt act towards that conspiracy. It requires there to be an agreement among 3 or more people that says, hey, you know what? Let's go get us some sex workers tonight. And then they make a phone call, and then they find out, well, there's none available. So they never do it, right? So those guys walk away and go, well, we never did that, right? So in that case, that is one crime. 3 guys agreed to go do that. That's conspiracy to do that. The next day they come back and they say, and they agree to do something else. And one person does one act towards it. And again, where we're getting at here is if they were going through the different things that Diddy could have done. If there's 3 or 4 different occasions where they did those acts or they tried to do things, but they never completed it. Maybe there's not enough evidence to say they ever got people there, but there's enough evidence to say 3 people come together and say, we made an agreement and actions were taken towards that end. And it was for purpose of furthering the criminal enterprise of whatever they say Diddy's part of, his record companies and making money and furthering his power source. A prosecutor can indict you. So if they're allowed to start, Tonio, when you sit there and say, well, I got nothing to hide, you might not know what you have to hide. They grab your phones, they go into your computers, right? And you think you're just, hey, man, I'm making a move here to save a few bucks. I'm doing this, I'm taking a shortcut here, a shortcut there. A prosecutor could come in and indict you for mail fraud and various different things that you wouldn't even realize you were committing because you don't even understand the laws. But the good news is our Constitution doesn't allow anyone to come in and start snooping around in your personal business unless they have something called probable cause. That's an undefined standard by the Supreme Court. It's a sliding scale, and a judge can decide where it falls when they're looking at it. But they still got to go to a judge. They still got to have a reason, and they still got to have some sort of evidence that they have some sort of crime. And they can't just go and say, we're going to just come in your house and look at everything. They've got to have a targeted area, and that is a protection that we have. So the idea that you're going to give that up and say, well, I don't have anything to hide. Well, I think you may be surprised at how much you might have to hide because you don't understand how complicated the laws have become. Well, the problem is, Tonio, is he couldn't walk away in that situation because, and this is the thing that I think this is what surprises me when you watch the video. It's the totality of the circumstances. He started to walk away. They were ramping everyone up. Where was he walking to? He started to get hit. The girls were pushing him. They were pushing him downriver against the river. He needed to get back to his party. He stands there and is like, get away from me. Why is there not a call for all those people when those kids start to converge on him? Could they not have gone the other direction? Just like one of them said, we wanted to see how this played out. You've got Mr. Cockfield recording this thing for social media. This is the point. It makes no sense when you say he could have left. Well, I know, Tonio, but I'm saying I don't understand how you could watch this trial that we all watched, watch that video, listen to the testimony, and have the opinion that he had an option to walk away any more than those kids did. And where was he walking to, in your opinion? Like, I'm asking this genuinely. I'm not asking this like to try to, but I'm genuinely interested. So I would. Where do you see him walking when you see the moment? And what I'm saying is, the beginning, he runs up, he has an interaction, and then he walks away. It is at that time that these kids start yelling that he's a predator. You see that other lady walk around. Now, yes, you could say he could have walked farther down the river, but he walks over to what he thinks is a friendly adult to start explaining the situation. And those kids run up on him and say, it doesn't matter. Get the hell out of here. Well, and then he attempts to point like down over here, and he tries to get the attention of his people. And the thing is, this isn't like something that takes place over 15 minutes. This takes place over like 30 seconds. And then before he knows it, Mattison comes in and Rhyley comes in, and they just go crazy on him. And then they start putting hands on him, and you see her with it like she's going to hit him with the phone. And then the camera pans away. And then you don't hear a hit or anything. You just hear an elevation of voices. And then you see him fall into the water, and then you see him very clearly get struck in the face multiple times. Clearly, this jury believed that he was in the wrong, that he punched this girl, and that as a result, everything he did from there was not reasonable and was not in defense of himself. That's what I'm saying. But again, and that's what I'm asking you, Tonio. Are you obviously you've viewed this? Is part of what you're viewing the idea that you're saying that? I mean, are you viewing him as guilty? I mean, is it playing into the fact that you think that he intentionally punches, like he loses his temper and punches it? Well, yeah, but Tonio, they could have fled. Like, do you not consider the kids being aggressors in this? Why are they heckling him? Why did they have to say a word to him? He was a distance away. Have you considered that part? Like, that's the part that I don't understand when the kids started this. And then they come up on him. And then they're calling more people over. And then they're trying to get people to come over and beat him up. And then you got Cockfield saying, for the people, for the culture. Essentially a battle cry. So how do we